And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Helix. I'm your host, Coach Helix. With me, my amazing co host,
Steven, the medium, is here.
Steven, the medium, is in the house. And with us, our amazing producer, Mr. Mark Clark.
Hi, my clock.
Hi, Mark Clark. Thank you for
Hello.
everything that you do to be with us.
Thank you.
So, oh my God, Steven. So today we are going to have an amazing conversation, all centered around the power of listening, and who wouldn't want to learn more about listening, right? What it means and how to be a better listener. Because I guarantee you, many of you, what you think listening is probably what listening is not. So today's going to be a great conversation, and of course, I am very different from Steven the Medium. I plan everything. Steven plans nothing. He just goes on and he's ready, and and I have to have everything planned. And my team, Florence, she creates a show plan for me every single show, so that I have an outline, so that I know exactly what's coming ahead, so that I know exactly what I need to be talking about. And today, my drive on Google sort of went a little nuts, and I lost several files, and one of the files was my plan for today's show. So I can say I was freaking out a little bit, because it's just very, this is not my thing. I need to have a plan. I need to know exactly where I'm going. So I know Steven is gonna have my back, because this is what he does best. But I figure, you know what? It is what it is. We gotta step into it. We have a live show to give you, and we're gonna give you an amazing show, and we're just gonna dance with what we got. What do you think about that, Steven?
I think that is the best way to handle everything. You look at your outline, and Florence does a great job, and I'm really glad you're working with her. And I pop in a minute before, and okay, let's go. So that's
Yeah,
just the way.
Steven, that's how he does everything. He just steps into it, boom, and done.
Well, you know what he looks. Not to interrupt, but when I
Yes.
was starting to look at writing a book, and I went on YouTube and just started to figure out what's the different perspectives and different authors, and there's a ton of stuff on YouTube that tells you how to start. And I kept reading over and over again to start an outline. But did I do that? No. I just started writing, and then after the book was done, I just titled them. So I did the complete opposite. But you know what? I'm not unlike a lot of people.
You're very
No,
special.
there's people that are like me, that just are very, just spontaneous and do things maybe not the sort of way that most people do it. So either
Well,
way, I think you get to a good result.
You beat to your own drums.
That's
you
true.
follow no rules, and it works for you. Me, on the other hand, that's probably one of the reasons why my book it's not done and yours is, because I need to have an outline. So, anyways, but bottom line is, we're gonna have an amazing show. We're gonna have an amazing conversation, because the truth of the matter is, listening is a subject that I'm very conscious about. I'm very passionate about. I learned a whole lot of listening from my mentor, the late Judith Glaser, who founded Conversational Intelligence and wrote an amazing book about it. So I'm gonna use that as my foundation, and you guys listening are gonna walk away with incredible distinctions about what listening is and what listening is not. But before we get into that, Steven, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with you. And I also want to talk about some upcoming changes in our show.
Yeah, let's listen to Steven. That's
Go
the
on.
subject. Let's listen to Steven. Right? I love that.
Yes.
So what's going on with me? A ton of stuff is going on with me. First of all, nothing to do with professional stuff, but I'm really excited because we live on Cape Cod, and my office, home office, is on the top floor, which, as you know, a top floor can get warm. And this is our third year. November will be 3 years that we moved here into this house on the Cape. In the last 2 summers, 21 and 22, I have not been able to open the windows on the top floor because of various reasons, mostly because the trim wasn't there. There's 3 sliding glass doors. This room is huge on the third floor. It takes up the entire house. And there's 3 sliding glass doors, and 2 of them didn't have screens. So over this past winter, we had the guys come in, put all new frames, and I was trying to get screens for the 2 windows, and ultimately it was a nightmare. Just, remember, Elix, I bought them from Lowe's, and I switched to Home Depot, and they kept telling me they're being sent, and they kept being delayed and delayed and delayed. So I decided to take matters into my own hand and be very creative, and I put in those metal. What was that?
The screen mesh.
The mesh screens that you can use in doorways so that you can go in and out, and then when you pass through them, the magnets close up. But I did something even more so, because the 2 that I wanted them, I don't go out. There's decks on them. I don't go out on them. There's just one in the back that I use. So very creatively, again, what I did was with little white string, I tied them all throughout the screen so that when the wind blows, it doesn't open up and close down or close back up. It just stays closed. And voila, I have a third floor that I'm in heaven. There's just a cross breeze, and I know this may be TMI, but I just felt like I'm so excited about it that I wanted to share it with everybody.
So if anyone needs buttons sewed or anything fixed, Steven, you can reach out to Steven, and for a fee, he can sew a button.
I'll do that. I'll do that for you. Well, listen, you were very impressed when I showed you what I did.
Of course, listen. I'm the first one to say kudos, because you never sewed anything before, and you did that and actually looked really good. And by the way, those screens looked really good. They actually look nice. They don't look tacky at all. And the alternative was, we have Anderson windows, and they wanted to replace the whole freaking window to put a screen door. So I think the alternative, what you did, it's incredible. You did a great job.
And saved so much money too.
Correct.
And it wasn't the plan about saving money. I just wanted those screens, and it was such an issue. And then I was on Amazon and just came across those metallic or those mesh screens and thought, wait a minute, this may work. And it has been a savings grace. Listen, we're approaching mid-July, and I have not pulled out the AC yet on third floor. So how cool is that?
That is amazing, and honestly, every time I go there, it's the difference is day and night. I mean, it's unbelievable, having the fans, having the windows open, what it does. So, Steven, you have some upcoming things happening. What are they?
Well, I have July 30th. I have an event in New York City, my first event, which is at the Green Room 42. I am busting with that one because it is a venue. If you just type in Green Room 42 and you see the schedule, the calendar of amazing musicians and talent and celebrities, it's just crazy. So the fact that I'm going to get to go there and do an event on the 30th, which is a Sunday at 1 p.m., I'm beaming, I'm busting, I'm really, really excited. Plus, I mean, you and I love going to New York. We get to see my amazing nephew, Tristan, shout out to him, that we love, and his wife, Maria. So it's really great. And August 22nd, I am doing an event in at the public house in Sturbridge Village, which I'm really, really excited about too. Tomorrow I am filming something that I can't really talk about, but I am filming a second episode of something that is really, really exciting. And what's more exciting is that this morning Elix was kind enough to come out with me and so I could buy a new outfit for tomorrow.
Well, the truth is you came with me because I had a doctor's appointment, and you came with me, and then after that, we went to get you.
So are
a
you saying
beautiful
I just
outfit.
crashed? I crashed your party?
No, you did something for me, and in return, I did something for you.
Yes, and we went to Mashpee Commons, and I went to one of my favorite stores. So
And and that you did, and you're gonna look amazing.
thank you.
Um,
I'm very
so
excited about it.
so before we get into the break, I also wanted to let everyone know. By the way, actually, scratch that. Before I say that, anyone who's listening, who is New England, Connecticut, New York, this is your opportunity to see Steven live in person at the Green Room 42 in NYC. So make sure that you look that up at Steven the Medium. There's a link that goes directly to the venue where you can purchase the tickets. But again, anyone, whether you live anywhere in New England, New York City from here is only what, a couple of hours, 3 hours away. We take the train. But if you live in Connecticut or even in the city, any part of New York, New Jersey, this is a great opportunity to go see Steven. So now I also want to talk about some changes that we are going to make in how we show up for you guys. So, Steven, you want to talk about it? Since the change pertains a lot to you.
Yes, I'm really excited. Guess what's coming back? Through the Static is coming back on a very limited basis, and thanks to you, Elix, that you're going to allow me to take one of your spots the last week of the month, correct?
Correct. The last week of every month, we will do an encore presentation of Steven the Medium through the Static. So it will be his show, and I'll co-host his show as we have always done. And honestly, I wanna thank. Well, there's two people I want to thank. One of them is Jim Jones for being flexible enough and so open, to the idea, and he simply said, "Yeah, you guys can do it." And then, of course, Mark, our producer, because he even changed his own show that was on Wednesdays. He's gonna do it now Fridays after our show, and so that he could be here, he could produce the show. So kudos to both of them. And Mark, you want to give people an idea as to when you're starting your show?
Let's see. There I am, huh?
I was going to say, he only produces the show, so I think he knows how to, put his
Well,
mic on.
They never let me, so I figure 2 weeks from today would be a good time, and it'll be 2 to 4. And the same thing, 50s, 60s, 70s, all that great music, just now on Friday afternoons.
I was very young. I was not born in those years, so I barely know the music, but I support you 100%, Mark. And it's Mark's Jukebox, right?
Yeah.
Every Friday now from 1 to 4, immediately after my show.
Mark, that's very.
Elix,
Yes.
if I do it 1 to 4, I'm doing your show.
Oh my God, 2 to 4. Sorry, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark,
Go ahead.
I'm still following your coattails because in 2018, when we both started our show, you started a week before me, and you're doing it again. I don't know what's going on, Mark. Just saying.
Yeah, well, we got to get everybody prepared.
Yes, that is true. But check out Mark's show because it's a fantastic show. I will say that. Fantastic.
Thank you.
So now you get the best of all worlds. You get to get a grip with Coach Elix every Friday for the first 3 weeks of the month. Then Steven the Medium takes over and he does his show the last week of every month, and you'll have an opportunity to call in and he'll read you. And then after our show, every week you get to listen to Mark's Jukebox, 60s, 70s, 80s music. So, hello. Win, win, win. That's what I say. But you know what's another win? We have to go into a commercial break. So let's make sure we do that, and we'll be right back. And hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I'm your host, Coach Elix. With me, my amazing co host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen the Medium, is in the house. And today we have an amazing conversation, the power of listening, and why listening is really matters in all of our relationships. And this is, today I want to talk about the power of listening really to connect, because when you listen to connect, that is what creates the opening to really have better conversations at home, in relationships, in the workplace, and anywhere, really. And there is a distinction, and like I said before, when I think about listening, Stephen, the first thing that comes to mind is my mentor, Judith Glaser, because Judith wrote a book about conversational intelligence. And conversational intelligence is really about the neuroscience of conversations, right? But conversations, one of the most important parts of any conversation is the listening part of the conversation, right? And when I think of effective listening, when I think about listening to connect, I really often think of her in everything that I've learned, and in that beautiful legacy that she has left behind for all of us. How about you, Stephen? When you think about listening, what comes to mind as it relates to listening for you?
Well, before I answer that, I will tell you that also I was able to meet Judith because I read Judith.
You did.
Yes, it certainly wasn't the exposure that you had with her in reference to who she is and what she accomplished, but it was on the spirit side, which I was very happy about. I think what comes to mind when you talk about, or when you ask about listening, is just how powerful it is, because it always, I would never have answered this way if this was even 5 years ago. But listening to me is so attached to stories. It just seems to me that just the way you listen can can put you in front of 10 different lanes, and you can select one based on whether you're listening a little bit, whether you're completely listening, whether you're tuning out. It's just, I think it's such a powerful sense. One of the I say six senses, but five senses.
Absolutely. And if you're listening and you are struggling with a particular relationship, with a particular situation where you feel that you haven't been heard, where you feel that you haven't been gotten by the other person, this today may be an opportunity for you to really pay attention to your own listening, right? Because before you understand somebody else's listening, you got to tune in to your own. And it's really, I think, Stephen, you've said it before, is looking at the lens from which you hear what others are saying, and the lens from which you speak what it is you mean, you want to say. Now, there is, I use this quote because Judith actually uses it in her book, Conversational Intelligence, in which is how great leaders build trust and get extraordinary results. So, if you want to build trust in your relationship, if you want to get extraordinary results in every aspect of your life, this is a conversation that's relevant to any of us. So in her book, she quotes the following. So listen, Stephen, I want you to listen to this. I don't think you've heard this before. So in Mark, I want you to listen to it as well and tell me what you're hearing. So this is a quote from Judith's book. I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm almost not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. Let me say that again. I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I'm not sure that you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. This right here, this quote, is that powerful because it exemplifies what the power of listening, in particular, listening to connect to somebody else's world. So, Stephen, what first comes to mind when you're hearing this quote?
Oh, there's a lot that comes to mind. I think the statement or the quote, I think just solidifies what I said, or just how powerful listening is. But I also think what I gather from that statement is just to sort of, that statement for me is like to open the sort of the listening part of a person to potentially see that there could be different meanings.
Yes.
that are coming. It's almost like if Judith was speaking to me, that's what's coming out of her mouth somehow, some way, before it, if you were talking about energy, before it hits my ears, a wind comes and just like shifts the energy a little bit, and maybe that little shift could be enough that when it hits me or lands for me in my ears, that I get something different from what she meant.
And that is absolutely, and what she says is that really, in essence, conversations are multidimensional. They are not linear. So it's not you say something and I'm hearing what you say. In fact, I'm hearing what my interpretation of what you said is. You may have your own interpretation of what you're saying, but unless we check in with one another, I may not be really hearing what it is that you meant to say. So, in other words, what we think, what we say, what we mean, what others hear, and how we feel about it afterward are really the key dimensions of understanding one another and understanding that listening to connect, it's very, very different than listening to or the hearing someone else, because you can hear somebody tell you something, but that is not necessarily understanding or making sure that you understand the meaning behind what that person said or meant to say, because unless you double check, we will never know. You get what I'm saying, Stephen?
Yes, I do.
And think about, relationships, right? Think about conflicts. Think about whether, personal relationships, work relationships. Somebody says something, you hear whatever you hear, and then we respond, we react to whatever our interpretation of what we heard is. And that often leads to more conflict in relationships, more conflict in conversations. Um, so you begin. By the way, perception. When I think of this quote, I think perception is reality, right? And whatever somebody's perception is, that's their reality. So again, we need to really begin to train ourselves to confirm, to double check, to ask, what I heard you said is this. Is this what you meant? How often do we have those conversations, right? I mean, Stephen and I, you and I have had conversations like that, and we've had those conversations because I have Judith in the back of my head, making sure that I confirm what it is that I'm hearing. Because if you don't confirm, that can lead you to what in the world of neuroscience is called an emotional hijack, right? Where you heard something, you make it mean something about you, and then you go into that state of fight, flee, protect, defend. You get what I'm saying, Stephen?
Yes.
Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think what you've, I mean, I don't know a lot about conversational intelligence. I mean, I know sort of the basics of what you shared with me, but I think it's just so brilliant of Judith to write that book and to have this conversation across the board, and it hits so many levels. It can hit a level of a CEO talking to a CFO, or it can hit a couple that's talking about their wedding. It's amazing.
Yeah, and exactly, and people in relationships. How often, you may have said something, and I hear something else, right? Because I just heard whatever I heard, and I made it mean something. I created my own narrative about what it is that you said, and then I asked you, and you may be like, Elix, that was not even in my mind at all. But unless you practice that ability to confirm, to check in with each other, that will always lead to miscommunication, misinterpretations, and certainly not listening to connect. So I think we do have to take another commercial break. Stephen, you love that term.
Commercial break.
Yeah, it is a commercial break. So let's take another commercial break, and when we come back, I want to talk further about listening and listening to connect to the other person. We'll be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elex. I'm your host, Coach Elex. With me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen, the medium.
Stephen the Medium, is in the house. And today we're talking about the power of listening. Or, like I would like to reframe that as listening powerfully, because that's actually very different than just simply listening. Now, Stephen, when you think about listening powerfully, and when I talk about, confirming when you listen, we talked about that quote at the beginning. When somebody says something, we hear what we're hearing, not necessarily what they meant to say. Have you found yourself knowing that you're not listening to somebody else's, what they're saying, but rather you're listening to confirm what you think they're saying, or perhaps reject what you think they're saying, or perhaps, you know, uh, you, you know, make, make another assumption about what you think they're saying. Well, have you found yourself in a situation like that?
Yes, I found myself in many, many, many situations like that. And over the past several years, and definitely this is in conjunction with knowing I'm a medium and getting so many lessons from spirit and growing and being in a different place than I was, as I mentioned, 5, 10 years ago. And again, I haven't seen your outline today about the show, so you may be speaking about this, or maybe this is what you're talking about.
There is no outline today, Stephen.
Okay. I thought you
we lost the outline. No, there is none.
Okay.
It's you and me.
But one of the things that I did find, well, there's several things, but one of the things that the focus of listening and listening to a person for me is that it just feels that there's another step. In other words, I could be speaking to somebody and having a conversation, and say that person is speaking to me about something, and I listen to it as best as I can, being very intentional that I want to listen, and I actually even want to then take a second to repeat what I think I just heard to get clarification, which is, I think, if there's 10 steps, I think that's 9 of the steps. But then I always think, though, that last one step to get to 10 is the most important thing, because it's the filter, right? It's the filter that I'm listening to. And if I can't though take that experience and use it as a learning moment to figure out what filters are in my head, because if I don't straighten out those filters or those stories, no matter how many times I repeat it back, I'm still going to walk away with not what the intention of the person speaking to me was. It's going to land differently, right?
Absolutely. And I think that is one of the most important steps in being self-aware as to what are the many filters that we hold for ourselves and for others. And by the way, that's the way society works and operates, right? We see certain people with a certain filter, right? And we listen through that filter. Whatever it is that we hear it through that filter. And the power of listening is in exactly what you said, Stephen, being so self-aware. By the way, that's an important part of what Daniel Goleman calls emotional intelligence. It's being so self-aware of your thoughts and what it is that drives your thoughts, that then you can self-regulate those thoughts. And that is a critical part of listening. Now, I love the term that Judith coined. She called it listening to connect, because when I think about listening to connect, I immediately think about what other listenings are not that. So, for example, if I'm listening to connect, I know I'm not listening to judge, and how often judgment comes in conversations. I also know I'm not listening to confirm something, because if I'm listening to confirm, it means I already have an idea as to what it is I want to hear. By the way, Stephen, every time I think about listening to confirm, I think of Golden Girls episode where Dorothy asked Sophia about did she know when she goes into that date with the guy that she didn't know showed up, for her prom, and she later on goes to Sophia and asks the question, right? Did you? And Sophia didn't even begin to answer, and Dorothy yelled, "Liar!" Right?
Yeah.
Because she asked the question, but she was not interested in listening to connect. She was simply listening to judge and to confirm what she already knew. Because she already knew that her mother was the reason why this guy didn't come back, right? It's also not, listening to reject something. And that's exactly what was happening. She was also listening to reject whatever she was saying. That's why she screamed even before she finished the sentence, liar, I don't believe anything you're saying. So this is important for you to have that level of self-awareness as to, what is that filter that I'm listening from? Am I really listening because I really want to connect to your world? Or am I really listening because I already have a filter about judgment, confirming, or rejecting what it is you're saying? And again, listen, if you want to listen to judge and confirm or reject, go ahead, knock yourself out. It's up to you. I'm not telling you, not to. But what I will say is that it's not going to strengthen your connection with others, whether it is at home or whether it is at work. And if you find yourself, struggling with connecting with certain relationships, I guarantee you it's because right now you are absolutely not listening to connect to that that person's world. You're probably listening to judge, confirm, or reject. Stephen, what are you thinking? What are you hearing here?
Well, I mean, I agree, but I think it's not easy for everybody just to listen to confirm. I think that's the phrase you just used, because, I mean, there's people that I just think of somebody maybe who is dating somebody and the person comes up to them and says that, they want to break it off, but they give some kind of particular reason why. They don't want to get, they don't want to get serious. They just broke up with somebody, blah, blah, blah. And the other person just hearing that as, I'm not good enough, or I'm not pretty enough, I'm not handsome enough, because of how they grew up. And I don't think, for some people, what I mean, it's something you've got to work at. It's not something that it's very simple to say, I'm not going to listen to connect because I don't really care. I'm going to listen to judge. It could be this whole history, this whole past of a person, that those filters are so like feel like they're so permanent that sometimes it's a hard thing. And I think that's the whole reason why we're talking about this, right?
Absolutely. And again, you are absolutely right. This is a skill that requires a lot of practice. And you may practice and fail. And that's okay, so long you keep practicing, because at some point you may get better and you may start connecting better. Again, remember, listening to connect is about focusing your attention on the other person. What are they trying to say? What are they thinking? What are they hoping you will help them explore? It's about connecting to their world and exploring their world. So if somebody, came to me and said exactly that, example, Stephen, I would then say, okay, so what kind of questions could you ask that could help you explore what that person world might be like? Because it may be just something as simple as really beginning to understand, oh, wait a minute, this person is coming from a real bad situation that has nothing to do with me. But that's the world that they're in right now. So let me just connect to that with no agenda other than just connect with that. Does that make sense, Stephen?
Yes.
So again, listening to connect is really about making sure that you get yourself in else's world, somebody else's world, and again, Stephen, you and I have had many conversations about this where, um, you know, until I explain to you what I'm feeling, you may not get it because I'm not letting you also into my world. What I'm experiencing, and that's why also speaking and talking to one another, and that's one thing that Stephen helps me a lot, which is being open and transparent about how I feel, so that he can then listen to connect to exactly what's going on in my world. And when I lost my mother, Stephen, that was a perfect example of me sharing with you how there's still days where I'm still navigating my loss, and that influences what I say, what I do, how I respond to everything. And unless I am able to verbalize that to you, then you're gonna get cues that may lead you to, I don't care. He's not he's not interested. He is being rude, when in reality I'm just, you know, dealing with or coping with you know, my own loss here. Does that make sense, Stephen?
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So what also makes perfect sense is that we need to get another commercial break. Otherwise, I'm gonna be yelled at by our producer Mark. So why don't we do that? Let's take a commercial break, and we will be right back. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get a Grip with Coach Elix. I am your host, Coach Elix. With me, my amazing co-host,
Stephen Frederick.
Stephen Frederick, Stephen the Medium, who happens to be my amazing husband as well. And today we are talking about the power of listening and listening powerfully. And I've grounded this conversation around my friend and my mentor, the late Judith Glaser, who wrote a book about conversational intelligence. And she coined the term listening to connect, which is different than listening to confirm, listening to reject, listening to verify. Listening to connect is about listening to somebody else's world. Now, one other thing that I often use, Stephen, in understanding how I'm listening and how I can listen powerfully is also understanding, being clear as to what kind of conversation am I having. And Judith also talked about this tool where it's like a roadmap, right? She talks about there's a level one conversation that she called transactional. There's a level two, which she calls positional. That's an exchange of information. And there's a level three, which is more transformational, an exchange of energy. Now, this is not a linear. So, I don't want you to think, oh, I'm going to have a level one, then I'm going to go into level two, then I'm going to have a level three. No, this is very fluid. There's many times where we need to have a level one conversation for whatever the reason. There's many times where we are engaging level two conversations. By the way, we often engage in level two conversations. And level three requires a little bit more intention, a little bit more practice. So for example, level one transactional conversation is something as simple as, you're interviewing somebody at work. That's a transactional conversation. That's where you are telling, you're asking, and you're listening to understand. You're listening to confirm. You may look at a resume, so you're confirming, the background of this individual, and so nothing wrong. Transactional conversations are very important. They're very necessary. The problem is that if you're stuck on a transactional conversation, then you're limiting that becomes a very I-centric conversation. You're limiting the ability to really listening powerfully and listening to connect, because transactional, you have a tendency towards telling more than listening or asking questions, right? Now, a positional conversation, that's more ongoing. A positional conversation may be, a conversation where managers are having with their staff members, maybe a conversation that you and I, Stephen, are having every day, where, you may be advocating for something, I may be inquiring about something, you have a certain position, you want to tell me about it, you want to convince me of something, you want to persuade and influence, the other person into understanding what it is that you're saying. Now, that can be both I-centric and we-centric. So a positional exchange, a positional conversation, it is important, and however, you're also listening from a very different perspective. Sometimes you're listening to accept what somebody else is saying versus listening to reject what somebody else is saying. And in this one in particular, you gotta be very aware that there's a tendency to have this addiction to being right, where you're having a conversation, but you're always coming from that place of, I'm right in whatever I'm saying, it's the right thing, and you have to convince me of otherwise. And that can often lead to more conflict in relationships and in conversational exchanges. And then of course, there's what Judith called transformational level of conversation, and that's where there's more an exchange. There's more a share and discovery, and that is the kind of conversation where you're sort of it's led by curiosity. It's led by wanting to understand, wanting to discover, something that we don't know. The only way that you can have that kind of a transformational exchange and conversation is through listening to connect. And you can also do so by always making sure that you're asking questions, open-ended questions. So not questions that are going to lead to either a yes or a no answer, because that becomes more listening to confirm or listening to reject a position. So again, listening to this is not a linear, roadmap. There's a very fluid way. And again, there's nothing wrong with a transactional conversation. If you're going to the market and you need something, you are going to have a transactional conversation. Very, very appropriate, right? Because you're not necessarily willing to build a relationship with the butcher at the market, unless you are, that's totally fine as well. In relationships, we're often having positional conversations. So you want to just raise your sense of awareness so that you don't get stuck in that level 2 all the time. Because again, that leads to listening that is not to connect to somebody else's world. Stephen, what did you get from the discussion so far?
Well, I mean, it certainly makes sense, and it's something that, unless you hear it like it's presented, I don't think most people necessarily even think about this, these three categories of listening and how this all works. But an understanding of it makes you just in a better place to listen. And when you were talking about that, Elix, what I was thinking also is that, based on as a medium and what I do, what I have learned is how the five senses, I know we're talking about listening, so we're talking about like hearing, right?
Yeah.
How the five senses are all connected. They have to be connected. They have to be strong to get to the sixth sense, to be able to connect to spirit and what have you. But there's just, I think the understanding that listening is, for me anyway, my experience is that if I read a text, I'm not hearing anything. I'm using my eyesight, my visual, but that's listening, right? It's
of course.
I'm looking at that and I'm having a reaction. If I'm speaking to somebody and someone's talking to me and they reach out and they grab my hand in a nice gesture, like a very calming gesture, that feel, that sense is also listening. It's all part of this. So I think it's something for people to really understand too, that listening just really includes all five senses, and having an understanding of that, I think, it just puts you in a better place to decipher what you're saying.
And that, Stephen, I actually had a conversation with one of my clients yesterday. He's a CFO of a company, and we talked about somebody else that is another client, but they know each other because they work in the same business. And he said to me, "Oh yeah, I heard from that other person recently, and they recently got in my nerves." I said, "Oh, so what happened is they got an email from that other person, and in the exchange, there was, there was that I'm telling you what I'm doing." And this is what I'm doing. So it became that positional exchange. But what he realized in our conversation, Stephen, was that why he got so activated and there was that emotional response, hijack, to that email was because he immediately knew he was coming from that position of being addicted to being right. Meaning that his way was the way and the only way, and no matter what, this other person was breaking that. So he wasn't even interested in listening. He didn't even hear what the person said because he just read the words, reacted to that, and went into that state of fight, flee, protect, defend, right? And that led to this person got in my nerves. After our conversation, he was like, "You know what? I actually need to circle back. I need to have a different kind of conversation because the conversation that I had was not a great conversation. And that exchange, Stephen, was began via an email exchange. So you're absolutely right that listening often happens in our text exchanges, in our email exchanges, and it involves all the senses.
Yeah, and every one of us has done it. Every single one of us has got a text or an email and interpreted it in not the way it was supposed to come, and it just sets us off. So I think once you start understanding that and just step back and think, wait a minute, maybe my position of this is the way this is, I know it is, just open it up a little bit to say, maybe I may not be interpreting this the correct way. And when that happens, it's life-changing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's the point of this conversation. Listen, you could keep doing business as usual, fine. But you can't then say, I want to live my best life. I want to live an extraordinary life. I want to have extraordinary results, because business as usual is not going to get you there. So I'm hoping that this conversation was a conversation that you found lots of value. And if anything, I'm hoping that you will take away these distinctions and begin to practice. Again, we're not seeking perfection. We're just seeking to learn the ability to correct, catch ourselves, and learn to correct in real time. So, Stephen, we're at the top of the hour. We better finish very soon, or our producer will tell me again how late I'm finishing the show every week. So how would you like people to connect with you if they're not connected with you?
Well, you know what? On the subject of listening, you know who's listening? My girlfriend, Jillian. Hi,
Jillian. Kudos. Shout out to
Jillian.
Jillian.
Hey.
Yeah, Jillian is works at one of our favorite spots here in the Cape, and we see her every week, and she treats us like VIPs. And every time she goes by the house, we hear beep 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 beep.
She's the most kind-hearted person. She really is. And I'm glad that we cross paths with Jillian. So I just wanted to say that. But you can find me at Stephen the Medium website, social media. Just type in Stephen the Medium, and my head will pop right out of your computer.
Excellent. If you want Stephen's head to pop out of your computer, go ahead. There you go. And remember, he has an upcoming show in New York City. So if you are listening from anywhere near New York City or the cities near New York City, you want to go see StephenTheMedium.com.
Come see me.
Because you want to get tickets ASAP. And for me, if you're not following me, you got to go to Coach Elix anywhere on social media, and my head will pop out of your computer as well. So you get to have two for the price of one.
Hey, I trademarked that. Just saying.
Okay. But other than that, thank you, Mark, for producing the show. Thank you, Jim. Everyone, thank you all for listening. And I wish all of you an amazing weekend.
Bye-bye.
And we'll be back next week. And don't forget, July 28th.
Oh, my God.
Stephen the Medium Through the Static will have an encore Friday, 1 p.m., July 28th. So you want to hear what Stephen the Medium is all about, you got to tune in July 28th.
I'm back.
All right, everyone, have a wonderful